welcome to USU Chess Radio. I'll be your host, McKay Duffin. This series will be focused on interviewing visiting writers who have visited Utah State this semester. Hello there to all those listening. My name is McKay Duffin, and I have the privilege today of interviewing Jill Bowers, one of the first visiting writers to USU this semester. She is a USU alumni, working both as a technical writer and a fantasy author. She is also the author of the Immortal Writer series, a young adult fantasy series focused around the saving power of writing. How are you doing today, Jill?
I'm doing really well. How are you?
I'm doing good. So is this your first reading at USU?
It's my second reading. We did a reading for the first book as well in 2016 November. So the second one.
That's really cool. So what I want to focus our discussion around today is the journey and your process of becoming a successful writer. What I wanted to ask you was, what inspired you to become a writer in the first place?
I've always wanted to be a writer. Ever since I was a little kid, that's always been the dream. So living the dream. And then I did learn a lot from coming here, especially from Dr. Seiner, and she helped me with like the craft of writing and things like that. Being here around other English nerds helps me kind of start the author journey.
What do you feel is unique about your writing or your creative process?
I don't know how to answer that. It's kind of hard to judge it for myself. So I go and I teach a lot of classes in like high schools and junior highs about writing. Something I always say is I could come in here and talk to you about world building or character development or dialogue or something like that. But the one thing I feel like I can really express that's my own is how much writing does help. So maybe the message that I send through the Immortal Writer series. Writing can be so powerful. Maybe not in the fictional way you see in books 1 and 2, but it can. I really believe what Professor Seiner told me that day, that it can save anyone, and it did save me.
Of the books that you're currently writing or have written, or other projects as well, what do you feel like has been the most difficult project that you've worked on?
This is probably a terrible thing to say. I have this idea for a line of children's books, and they're really cute, and we've had people interested in it before, but the person I have doing my illustrations she calls herself the George R.R. Martin of deadlines, and that's real accurate. So I think one of the hardest things on stuff I'm working on right now is collaborating with people. I would much rather do everything with it myself, but I can't draw. My stick figures look like potatoes. It would never work. So that's probably the hardest thing. She probably wouldn't appreciate me telling you that. And something I struggle with when it's just me is I worry, this might sound weird, but I worry about getting trapped in my own mind. And sometimes going into the stories, I kind of lose reality for a minute. And so sometimes, like when I have a lot going on, I don't dare write because I know that I'm going to get lost in the land of story off somewhere. And it's difficult for me sometimes to stay in reality because I'm so absorbed in the stories.
What was your biggest obstacle in your journey to becoming a writer?
This is a loaded question. It was actually very difficult for me. When I was here at school, I had a traumatic brain injury that really affected me. I didn't graduate, actually, because of that. I still hate that. But when those injuries happened, I couldn't read anymore. Like I could see that and pick out a few words. It wasn't like it was completely gone, but my short-term memory was so affected that I couldn't sit down and read a book or even a poem because I couldn't remember what I'd read. And so it was a very slow, painful process, making myself learn how to read again. And then it was hard for me to keep writing for the same reasons. And because so much had happened that was really difficult for me, I didn't know that I could really crawl my way out. Then I was visiting Dr. Seiner, and we were talking about all this. She was very helpful to me when I had the injuries and everything. And she told me, keep writing, Jill. It will save you. And I've held on to that. You know, when I had to leave school because of the injuries, all I really felt like I had left was my writing. And so for me to become a published author, I felt like that was my option. It was like a kind of a desperate thing, but also something I loved. But I wouldn't accept no, because that's all I had left, I felt like at the time, was my writing. And so I was determined to make it worth it. But then becoming a published author, I was able to find my publisher through a Twitter pitch party. They hold a couple of those every year, and you have the space of a tweet to kind of pitch your book. And then if the publisher likes it, they favorites your tweet, then you can submit to them. If they don't, you can't. It's kind of an untraditional way of finding a publisher, but it worked out really well for me.
I'm so sorry that happened to you. I can't even imagine what that would have been like. But I think it's an immense victory for you to be able to come back to writing and then be able to produce this fiction that's inspired so many other people.
Yes, I'm very thankful that I was able to crawl out of that darkness I was in. And I'm really thankful for the support I have here. I'm really grateful that Utah State lets me come back and do events like this, especially where I couldn't graduate for health reasons.
I read your first book in the Immortal Writer series, and one thing that kind of struck me that I saw was the saving power of writing. And so kind of building from that personal experience, is that what largely inspired you to think of the book idea that you came up with, or were there other factors involved as well?
Well, I was actually really mad one night because I was bored, super bored. And I was like, why can't there be magic and, all this stuff? So I started to think about my favorite books and how cool it would be if they all came to life, but also how terrible it would be if they all came to life, because horrific things happen in books and they're terrible characters. And it kind of just blossomed. I don't know if blossom's the right word. It kind of just grew from there. It was originally going to be a standalone, but then these other little story bits snuck their way in. So we have a 5-book series now.
As I was reading your book, I really appreciated the originality of it with all these different, historical characters and writers that were in the novel. And so what I was wondering is, was there anything in particular that influenced your interpretation of their personalities, like with William Shakespeare?
I mean, some research for sure and stuff like that. But a lot of it, honestly, I took liberties for sure. Like, the way I portrayed Jane Austen is nowhere near accurate, but I'm aware of that. But I definitely took a lot of liberties and kind of had them be the way I needed them to be. But I tried to incorporate their histories in different ways. So in book 1 especially, there are a lot of inside jokes. Like Douglas Adams is wearing a yellow towel. And I never explain why that is. I have those tidbits in there for every author so that if someone studied literature, they're in on the secret joke. But I really took liberties for sure. I really enjoy learning about the authors and kind of playing with them a little bit. I can't tell you that. That would be a spoiler for book 3. Never mind. Continue.
Once your book was going to get published or accepted for publication, what was it like working with the editor, trying to take your story that you love so much and then to a certain degree kind of, refining it and changing it to make it better?
I had a really good experience with my editor. I had 2 separate editors, so the one for book 1 and another one for book 2, but the one for my very first book, I really liked her. She made my story better without changing my voice, which is hard for editors to do, I think, because they kind of want to overhaul it, but my editor was very, very good, and I know she made my story better. The edits that they requested made sense. It was a longer process for book 1, whereas for book 2, the revision process was way shorter because I learned a lot. But I've had positive experiences with my editors. I know that is not universally true for everyone. But something to remember is, even if you disagree with your editor, they're trying to make the book sellable. That's what matters to them. They're not out to get you or say that you're a bad writer. They're trying to market your book in a way, connect to an audience, then you might not know as much about as the editor.
You mentioned you had 2 editors. Was it one editor for each draft, or did you work with both of them at the same time?
I just worked with Talia for the first book and then Alistair for the second, for the separate books. Mm-hmm. Because Talia is now doing more my publicist stuff, so she sets up a lot of events and stuff for me. A lot of publishing houses, though, you have a lot of editors. You can get up to 8, especially in the big houses, because you have the proofreaders, the content editors, it's so many different things that you have to edit. So it's another thing with self-publishing is even if you pay for it to be edited once, that's not enough. You have to go through several rounds and it can get pricey, but that's what you have to do if you really respect your writing and your audience.
Well, it's been a pleasure interviewing with you, Jill. Thank you for being on the show, and to everyone else, thanks for listening.
Thank you.